Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another live, all about Afraid to Speak, the very first feature film from Riverpoint Studios, which is out now, right this second. It is available at riverpointstudios.com/afraid to speak, or you can just go to riverpointstudios.com, click on movies, and you'll be able to easily find it. Today we're doing our last of 3 live streams with the main cast of the film. Today we're going to be talking to Bob Mann, who plays depression, a physical manifestation of depression in the film, and finishing off the trio that is the main cast of Afraid to Speak. So this stream will just be, us sort of talking about the film, talking about how it was made, talking about stories, about certain scenes, certain moments of production, thoughts on the legacy and stuff like that. Just, an open conversation about Afraid to Speak. And it's interesting now because the last 2 that I did were sort of leading up to the release of this film, where it's out now. It exists. It's out free worldwide. Anybody can access it. So it's a different dynamic this time. It feels lighter in a weird way. So if you don't know what Afraid to Speak is a feature-length film that I wrote and directed way back in 2014. And 6 years later, this past Monday, it finally came out for all to see, for free, for everybody to watch. And the film is about a young man, Nolan, played by Taylor Olson, who is dealing with depression. And depression in this film is a physical manifestation in the form of a human being, played by who we're going to be talking to in about 7 minutes, Bob Mann. Things begin to look up for Nolan as he runs into a childhood friend, Ellie, played by Paige Devon, but very quickly things turn back around as depression tries to regain that control and that chokehold over Nolan's life. I've already said this 1,000 times. I have notes, and I'm going off notes, so it's really messing me up here, because God forbid I have any sort of plan. We'll talk about that later when Bob's on. So the film is out right now. That's what the film's about. The film's out, is available right now. But along with the feature film, you can also check out a couple of bonus features we put together for the release. One, we have a 15-minute featurette about the deleted scenes, which features introductions to each deleted scene to give you sort of context and the reasons to why the film, or why the scenes didn't make the final film. We have a Outtakes and Bloopers reel, which is mostly Bob Mann, because he is a very hilarious human being. And despite the fact that we took the subject matter of the film very seriously, the production itself was incredibly fun. So we caught a little bit of that on camera. And finally, the sort of biggest bonus feature that we're releasing in segments is the opening up, the making of Afraid to Speak documentary series, which chronicles the creation of the entire project from initial idea all the way to public release. And right now we have the prologue out, which sort of leads up to the moment in which the idea came to be. So it's sort of a little bit of here's how I got into film, and here's the path that got us to this point in choosing, all right, time to make a feature film. And very soon we'll be releasing chapter 1, and then periodically throughout the end of November, and we're aiming for before the end of December, the entire 12-chaptered series will be out for you to watch and see. And when it's all over as well, we're going to make sort of a feature-length film version of all the chapters, and we'll cut them together so that if you do want to binge sort of the whole thing in one go, you can. So that's all available right now, aside from the other chapters for opening up, which will be coming out very soon. And it's available now, as I've mentioned 18 times. Afraid to Speak is available now. That's wild to me. That is a wild concept to me. And after 6 years, it still doesn't feel real. Yet it feels the most real out of anything I've ever done in my career. So my brain's doing backflips right now. For everybody who has watched film so far, I just want to say thank you. We've gotten well over 100 hits on this thing already, which is incredible, because once we sort of went live, we sort of went radio silent, sort of let this thing do what it was going to do on its own for a week, or at least within the week. But we've gotten a lot of messages from those who've watched it, and I just want to say I very much appreciate not only you taking the time to watch it and taking the time to support this film and this sort of incredibly independent project, but also the everybody who has messaged me has messaged me and opened up about some very serious topics, because the film is about depression. It talks about suicide, anxiety, and all that. And I've gotten a lot of messages that were very strong and showed a lot of strength and showed a lot of bravery and everything, sharing personal stories and sharing personal struggles and stuff like that. So I just want to thank everybody who has watched film so far, who has supported and sent messages. I hope that this film, has a life. It's sort of out there now, so whatever it's going to be, and that's exciting for me. But I hope that it causes some conversations. I hope it brings out maybe some words that people weren't willing to say out loud, and I hope it pushes the conversation forward with depression, anxiety, and the very serious subject matter of mental health. So thank you everybody for giving this film a chance so far. Next up on my notes, which I can't read because I write like a doctor. My excitement for it, that's what that word is, excitement. My excitement for the fact that it's out. I sort of already touched on this, but I'll touch on it again as I stall for time. It's still so weird to me to say, like, hey, this film we made in 2014 that we started writing in 2012 that took 6 years to sort of get to a point where I was comfortable and ready to put this film out, is out in an unrestricted way. There's no subscription needed. There's no anything needed for you to watch the film except internet access, I guess. That is baffling to me. And I think, and I talked to quite a few people about this specific thing. I think for the longest time, this film took up so much sort of real estate in my head, where it was all I was thinking about. Even if I was focused on other things, there was always the little spark that was sort of reminding me about this thing. And a lot of that was sort of fear and worry and that sort of insecurity that comes with being a director and thinking your work sucks. A lot of that was proven to be just genuinely false feelings the second I put the film out and released it, because I felt like I lost 50 pounds. It just felt free in a way that, like, I'm not trying to get rid of the film so I can just, I'm going to go do something else to get this thing off my plate. It felt freeing in the sense that all those fears went away, all those, stresses and insecurities went away. And now it's at a point where, hey, it's out. It's going to do what it's going to do. It's going to be what it's going to be. And now that's out of my control. And that excites me in a major way. So, yes. And speaking of excitement, I guess, I think I had some sort of segue into that, but I lost it somewhere. So we're going to do a take 2 on this. Speaking of Afraid to Speak, one of the most crucial parts of the film is the physical manifestation of depression. And that is played by Bob Mann, who we will be talking to very, very shortly, within, I think, a minute. What time is it now? Yeah, within a minute. This idea sort of all started, the idea of Afraid to Speak, which back then was called Dark Elephant, with this idea of having depression be something that you could see and interact with and stuff like that. Originally, it was this dark figure that never really talked. It was just sort of always there. And a lot of the emotions and stuff were more implied and not so much dictated like they are in the final film, which is a much better way to do it. But that was always the idea, this physical manifestation of depression. And I am incredibly happy and so insanely proud that Bob Mann was the one to take that idea, present it on screen, and make that idea work. So now's about that time. Let's see if we can't get Bob Mann in here. This has worked twice so far. Let's see if it doesn't mess up now. Here we go. Will it work? Hello.
Dylan, are you there?
I am there. Are you there, Bob?
Can you hear me, Dylan?
I can hear you and I can see you.
Oh, okay. There you are.
How are you doing?
I'm good. I've been listening this whole time. That was a huge gag on my part. Yeah.
That's embarrassing.
All right.
Way to rip down the curtain. You're really adding to the mystique of this, huh?
It's one of the main things I do. Is
Fair enough.
rip down curtains. Yeah.
Fair enough. All right. So afraid to speak. Let's jump right into this. Do you remember what version of the script you first read? Was it the version that was supposed to take place on the lake, or did you get sort of the later city version?
Oh no, it was the lake. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's interesting. I mean, one of the advantages that I have having this chat with you now is that I've watched the interview you did with Paige, and I watched the interview you did with Taylor, and I'd actually forgotten that there was an original plan to do it down at Barrington Passage. Because and this is funny. There was something Paige said actually that I wanted to say something about, and it was that I'd forgotten altogether, because I'm not a huge expectation-based person. I'm more of like an experience kind of based person.
Right.
And I'd forgotten how disappointed I was when I found out. I didn't know that there was this moment where maybe the movie wasn't going to happen. I wasn't aware.
Oh, really?
No, that was news to me. So I didn't know that. But I remember being very excited, and I'd been acting for a few years, and both Taylor and I were on the verge of joining the Actors Union. So it was an exciting time to be doing a project like this for us.
Yeah.
But I remember the moment of disappointment that I wasn't going to be able to do something that this project offered, which was a secluded, okay, we're going to go off for a whole bunch of days and just be, out in the backwoods where you live. Like I'd never been down to Barrington Passage. I imagined you living in like Kicking Horse Pass or something like that, like just way off grid, like no electricity, no nothing, and just log cabins. I was thinking, oh, this is great. We're gonna be able to really get into this, not be distracted by life, and not have to think about my friggin' kids, and just not have to do any of that stuff. And I remember being disappointed that wasn't going to happen. So that was that. Like I totally forgotten about that until I watched those interviews. So it was just delightful to be reminded of that.
Away from electricity, any sort of working mechanics in the past century, stuff like that.
Yeah, they don't even have flush toilets down there.
No, toilets.
Yeah.
Let alone flush. It's a field, my man.
You've come a long way, bud.
Wow. Kicking Horse Pass. I'm fitting that into whatever I'm writing next. That's incredible. I think back now too, because I think the progression was letting Taylor know, and then I was going to let Paige know, and then
Yeah.
So I guess by the time I got to Taylor, it didn't matter anyway. So that's hilarious that you never.
No, it didn't shock me at all that you told him the movie was off, and his reaction was, "Yeah, no, it's not."
That
No,
is
I
the
don't
most
think it is.
Taylor Olson answer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he just drives things into existence. That's his
Yeah.
MO. Yeah, yeah.
He's the closest thing to a wizard I think I've ever met. It's just-
100%.
yeah.
100%. Yeah, it's inspiring.
Hopefully he uses that to get some sort of funding at some point.
At some point, yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay, so what when you did first read the script, what was your initial thought about the character itself of depression?
Um, I mean, I was taken in by the idea.
Yeah.
It's well, first of all, most of what I'd done up to that point, which had been non-union type student films, projects people were doing, things that are really interesting and really exciting, but a lot of really heavy-handed stuff and a lot of comedy. I'd done a lot of comedy, and I've still, to this day, my career is mostly littered with kind of lighter, sort of comedic, ridiculous type things. And so this was the first time, and maybe the only time, if I think back over the last 10 years since I started doing this stuff, seriously, that I was playing a character that wasn't real. And so that was the first thing that struck me was, okay, there's going to have to be a lot of decision making about what this character is. I mean, he's not even a guy. Like, what is this? What, you start to get into things like, what is depression's motivation?
Yeah.
You know, what does depression want? You know, what is it, you know, what's it seeking to achieve, and what's its relationship with the subject of the depression? I found myself asking a lot of those questions and thinking about those things in ways I hadn't thought of before. And it was really interesting to, and I also felt a lot of pressure, to be honest, because I felt like, okay, this is a feature. We're going to shoot this over a number of days, stretched out over a number of months. I got to get this right off the top. Like, we can't, you know, we're not going to figure this out over a rehearsal period. You just have to, you just have to know what it is. So I think at some point early on in the process, I settled on depression as a parasite, as a sort of parasitic, very self-interested, you know, sort of thing. And that drew me in. Like, once I was drawn in initially anyway, but once I sort of settled on that, I thought, okay, I think the writing is there. I think the writing informs that. The writing drives one to that conclusion. And once I found that, it became very clear in everything that you'd written, and all the different scenes and the arc of the piece, I thought made perfect sense. And it just felt very natural once I discovered that, kind of going through the script. Yeah, I mean, I loved it. I told you that I did, and I wouldn't have done it if I didn't. You know, it was a really fun, really great, interesting project to do.
Cool. That's awesome. Yeah, I have always sort of seen him as some sort of version of a parasite.
Yeah.
Sort of speaking of that, there was sort of a crucial moment, and anybody watching this who hasn't seen the film, I'm going to go into slight spoilers here to a specific scene, because it's a very important scene in the film, and
Right.
it also on the day.
The nudity, yeah.
Yeah, that exactly. That will be in the extended director's cut in 2024 when we re-release this thing. Yeah, sorry, you don't get that yet.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can't wait for the life of extra bonus features that this is going to have. I hope you never stop making them. I hope you
No.
make bonus features forever. I've watched the bloopers. I've watched the prologue of the documentary. I know more now about this project than I do about the lives of any of my children. Like, it just,
Right.
it's so fun and wonderful and detailed, and the things that I've learned. And you know, I don't mean to cut you off, because I know where you're
That's
going,
fine.
but I just wanted to get it out that I will happily forego my signed DVD of Afraid to Speak, which I think for me is signed by Tabor and Leon. I think that was my deal. That's whose signatures are on mine. You'll have to
That is in the
that.
contract. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
in the contract, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will happily forego that for a signed VHS copy of Dukes of Hazzard. I will take that hands down, no question.
Well, I tell you what, if I ever convert the film to VHS, it will be #1 on the list to get a signed copy of that.
It's still on beta, is it?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's on. Yeah, sure. Let's say it's on vinyl. We didn't even shoot video; it's just audio.
I love it. I love it. I love all of it. Yeah.
I see. That's my plan. I made one film, and then all of the material based on my career from now on will be just to build that story up more. Right? Like, there's no point in making other stuff. We've peaked.
No, that's the dream. That's why you do this. You make one movie so you can talk about it for 20 years. Why not?
I mean, I think the papers will call this Nova Scotian Star Wars. So
Oh God, I hope so. I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when Disney buys it, it'll be great. Okay, so complete 180 to something incredibly serious.
How it works. It's how it works.
There's a scene in the film, and again, spoilers for anybody who hasn't seen it. There's a scene in the film that has Taylor sort of irrationally walking through the woods trying to escape depression, who is really hammering home this idea like, haha, you just messed up another relationship. I can't believe you did this. You're a real romantic, telling her to F off. And he ends up in this sort of spot in the middle of the woods where he then sort of contemplates suicide. And originally the scene had played out in sort of a way where you weren't necessarily calm. It was more do it, like, because you knew that he wasn't going to do it, and you just sort of pushed, and it was more aggressive than what ended up on screen. But on the day you and Taylor came up to me and said, can we have 20 minutes just to sort of try something else because it wasn't quite working. What were your thoughts in terms of what you could do to better that scene? And I mean that in a good way, because I think what you guys have done took an idea that maybe I was too connected with in a way that I wanted to make cinematic. But you guys turned it more into, well, here it belongs in the film now. It's not sort of maybe a little bit of a piece that doesn't quite fit with the narrative of Afraid to Speak. What were you thinking on that day? And was there ever a moment where you weren't going to say anything, or was it always, all right, let's see if we can at least try?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Was there a moment that we weren't going to say anything, or where I wasn't? Because I think it was me that approached Taylor, and I don't, I really don't want to hang Taylor out to dry. I think that as actors, Taylor and I both share a real affection as actors for writers with ideas and with vision, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think this is an important thing, just maybe disclaimer to say in preface to us talking about that scene. I am not the kind of actor that reads a script and goes, oh, well, this part sucks. I'm going to go talk to the writer about maybe improving it. Wait a minute. It's not my thing. It's not my script. I've been asked to help out with it, and it is not something I would commonly do. So yeah, that instinct kicked in really early, and my initial feeling was, this is Dylan's piece. He's got a vision for it. I don't need to necessarily agree from a writing perspective with all of it. My job is to perform it. Like that's what I'm supposed to do.
Right.
So that was my initial feeling. But then in thinking about it and talking to Taylor about it, I would actually say it would be very much a credit to you and the story that you came up with and the writing, that I came to feel a little bit differently the more I worked through it, and thought, Dylan has written such a strong arc and through line of this guy's journey and his experience with this entity that's been part of his life, this personification of depression. I almost took to it so affectionately that I couldn't stay quiet about this one part. Right. that I thought deviated, and Taylor agreed, we talked about it. It deviated in our minds so dramatically, and I totally understood why it was written the way it did, but it deviated so dramatically from that arc, and really, frankly, going back to what I said before, that parasitic piece, right? Yeah. Like the parasite would want nothing more than to keep their host inside a cave with just enough to eat and just enough to keep it warm and safe, but certainly doesn't want the bear that it's sitting on to wander out too much and put itself at risk. But it also doesn't want the bear to die, right. Like it doesn't want to goad the bear into to something. And so in a way, I think we imagined that scene being a sort of a ratcheted up version of depression's MO, which is to say, this thing that you think you're going to do that's going to rescue you from whatever it is you think you need to be rescued from, it's only going to cause you more pain in the form of the pain it will cause to the people who love you. And I'm not, you still there?
Yep. Yeah, it got a little cracked up there, but I think we're good.
Yeah, it slowed down a little bit. I mean, that's just sort of where we settled on it, was like this scene, he would play this scene the same way he would play all the other scenes, which is to say, you're an idiot for thinking that this is going to solve any of your problems. This is only going to make things worse. Even if those things are things that happen after you're dead, that's what the parasite does. It gets into your head and talks you out of taking bold, risky things to do. And that's not going to be everybody's experience with depression, but I believed it was the experience you wrote. Like that was the one that you had imagined, and I thought played out pretty clearly and effectively. So it was, and to your credit, I mean, your collaborative spirit through the whole thing and your willingness to let us do it the way that we want. I mean, you've said on a number of occasions how kind of silly at times things were, and how much we laughed and how much we had a good time. I mean, there's a version of a writer and a director who would, put a stop to some of that because this was too serious, and you never did. So that's very much to your credit, I think.
I appreciate that. I still to this day, I genuinely believe that there was one way to do that scene, and it was the way that you guys did it. Looking back and reading through the script, you guys are right. It would be from the trying to tell, and I'm glad you guys came up to me because I don't know if I would have known it was wrong without having that conversation, having people that I trusted with that material, ask for a chance. Because I think I even said on the day, like, yeah, let's see what happens. There's a chance we might go back to the original script, but I want to at least see what you guys are thinking. And in the end, I mean, it very much works. I'm happy you came up to me because I think I was about to make a wrong decision without realizing that it was even close to being the wrong call for the film.
Yeah, it was also very early days, I remember. Like
it was like day 3, I think.
Yeah, it was very early on, and Taylor and I felt a lot of pressure, I think, because of that, because it was sort of like, it's early days to be having this conversation. And if we were shooting this scene on day 15 or something like that, then by that time we would have built up, we could have introduced it as something to talk about gradually and just simply work our way into it. But it was go time. Like, it was ready to go. And, watching it again, I watched it the other night, and it's, I mean, I was taken by the overall thing, but it feels like it fits. Yeah, it was, I think it was a great experience filming that scene. I was reminded of how, I mean, it was in that project that I fell in love with working with Taylor. And he and I have developed very much I think a kinship built around, a friendship, obviously, but a kinship around our devotion to moments and trying to find the moment in a scene. Like, what's the, what is it that's happening here, and who needs to give what, and who needs to step back, and what's that dance? We very much love doing. He's easy to do that with, and I recall that scene being the one where we found that and discovered that for the first time, and we've gone on to work on a whole bunch of things together and write together and develop things together and produce together, and we've had a hell of a ride so far with creative projects. And really, honestly, I think it started on that rock. I'm not gonna lie, like, I really do believe that it did. Yeah,
that's incredible. I was talking to somebody about this. I can't remember who it was, but I was talking to somebody about this lately, and it's like, it's going to be so cool in 30 years to sort of look back wherever we are at with our own lives, be like, yeah, it all started with this very rugged, cheap film that we made in 2014.
We'll be watching the movie on our cybernetic implants and our contact lenses. I can't
our Google
wait for
chips.
that, honestly. Yeah, I can't wait to like your film with my mind. That's what I'm counting down to. Yeah, and I'll be in a vat by then. Like,
right.
Yeah.
Like head only. Everything else is okay.
Yeah,
cool.
We wheeled around by assistants. Yeah, my kids. They'll be wheeling me around. Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Excellent. In terms of shooting, obviously that was a big sort of pivotal moment of that film. But was there? I assume, and maybe I'm wrong with this, was that the more challenging hurdle to get over, is getting to that point where you're able to sort of say, hey, can I change your script? Or was there a moment during the filming that was sort of, you consider the most challenging to get right?
Oh, well, to get right, yeah. I mean, once I sort of made those decisions, I think it all kind of went from there. I mean, frankly, for me, the most challenging thing about it was just fitting it in with my life, right? I mean, Taylor and Paige, I'm not going to speak for them. They're busy people. They were straight out of school. I know Taylor was working on another film. Taylor was working on Noon Gun at the time.
Yeah.
And I can't recall if Paige was working on something else, but I know that she had some theater projects lined up, or she was beginning to work on them. I can't exactly recall. It was quite some time ago, but I mean, I have a day job and I have a large family, and I have, and then again, that was, to me, that was on an ongoing basis. That was the challenging part of it. was to stay in the mindset of it and show up ready to go when it was time to go, without really getting the luxury of being totally immersed in it in a work day type thing, you know, kind of doing it in an afternoon. I mean, I'm lucky I have a job where I can take some time off, and it does slow down a bit in the summer, but my experience up to that point had been working on, you know, a couple of seasons of a web series where it did take stretches of time, some short films that were like 2 days, 1 day, some little day player stuff. And then even since then, right after shooting Afraid to Speak, you know, I did a little stint on Haven and Canadian Tire commercial and a Lion commercial, and then I was in the Union. Those things are all little short little blasts. You know, anyone who works professionally will tell you that there's more of that kind of stuff than there is landing a big role, unless you're in theater. And I'm not in a place or time in my life where I can do that. Honestly, I found that to be the biggest challenge, was just sort of being like, okay, where are we? Where is this in the script? What's the energy right now? What's happening? Just trying to keep track of that myself. I think it was a bit easier for me because my character's a little bit more monochrome than the others. He remains fairly consistent, I think. But but I was still mindful. I didn't want to mess it up. But other than that, I thought the shooting was delightful. I mean, I really did have a blast, and Paige and Taylor were just fantastic with, and you and Leon, and you know, everyone you brought in and got a lot of fun. Can you hear me? Yeah, you're there. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't catch the last 2 sentences you said.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, I was just saying that the shooting itself, I mean, other than kind of trying to be in the mindset, the shooting itself was delightful, and I loved working with Taylor and Paige. They were great, and you and Tabor and Leon and Chelsea, and you know, everybody else that you had involved coming in to help out were just it was just delightful, honestly. Like I had a really great time, and I found it to be being there and doing it, I found to be fairly effortless. You know, once we got there, it was a good, you run a very, you know, a good and welcoming and warm kind of environment. It's very genuine, and it's very sincere, and it's very much in a spirit of like I said, collaboration, but also a spirit of care and a spirit of just kind of genuine concern for how everyone's doing. And you don't see that all the time. That's not actually terribly common. Oftentimes there's someone delegated with that role, whatever it is. Yeah. And then other people are concerned with their own thing. You were very concerned about everyone and what everyone's experience was. And that just goes a long way. You get better stuff out of people when that's your approach and your attitude. And I was struck by that right from the beginning. I thought that was a real asset of yours, and still is, I would think.
I really appreciate that. It's funny because there's so much, I think there's so much concern and pressure in the moment where you don't, at least for me, it's sort of a constant thing where it's like, well, I'm effing this whole thing up. So I'm glad to hear that was the environment. So I'm gonna start to wind down here a little bit. I just have a couple more questions for you before we take off. So the dynamic between you and Taylor, you know, you guys are sort of the main two in this film, where you have the protagonist who is dealing with depression, and then you have depression itself, the antagonist, sort of really just gnawing at the back of his neck the entire time, trying to make him realize that, you know, stop taking risks, sit down, your mind, the parasitic nature that you mentioned. But with Ellie, you don't exist to her. Was there any sort of approach that you came into it as an actor that was unique or interesting or even difficult in being in scenes with her, knowing that, you know, to her, you don't exist as a character?
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that. I don't think I thought about it all that much. Like I really don't. I think that I can imagine that there might be a different person or a different actor who would say, well, you know, from a method perspective, you know, I'm the minute I get on set, I'm only going to talk to Taylor. I'm not going to talk to anybody else because I don't exist to anybody else. I don't believe in any of that stuff. Yeah. I mean, I think it can be helpful. If that's what you need to do to get you there, then great. But no, I mean, Paige, it was written so clearly. I think that's the thing. It was written so clearly that I didn't feel that there were obstacles that I had to work around. And I perceive her as a threat in the same way that I suppose, and I'm sure one could pick this metaphor apart, but where a parent might be concerned or skeptical or critical of one of their teenage children's friends who they think is a bad influence, but they've never actually met the friend, they've never had a conversation with them, they've never looked them in the eye, they've never sat down with them. That just like, it's interesting you say that to Ellie, I don't exist. Ellie doesn't exist to Sam either. Ellie's just the latest in a long line of threats that will put Nolan in a place where he doesn't need Sam anymore, where he doesn't need that protection, where he can just kind of wander away at will. Heaven forbid he begin, I don't know, a friggin' meditation practice or something like that, and actually find peace within himself. I mean, I imagine Sam would be right there in his ear, telling him, no, this is new age nonsense. Like, you don't need this. Like, this is just you just end up thinking about bad things or whatever. So I didn't really think about that much. I enjoyed the energy of it, though. I mean, that table, the kitchen table scene where I'm sitting there between them is one of my favorites in the film. I like how he appears and disappears according to the risk level.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so once Dylan hits a 4, or once Nolan hits a 4, suddenly Sam shows up and he's like, whoa, what's going on here? But then he'll disappear. So I didn't find that hard to dance around. No,
Cool.
I thought the writing was clear, and I thought the energy was very sharp. Yeah.
Cool. When was the first time you saw the film? Do you know?
I think I saw a cut of it. Maybe, I think it might have been in 2015 sometime. Mm-hmm. I think I watched a cut of it. You might have sent me something that was, no, I wouldn't call it rough. I think it was a bit further along than that. But that was the last time. I haven't seen it since then. I didn't see it screened in any festivals or anything like that. And then the other night was the first time that I've seen it since then. Yeah. And I'd forgotten some little things that happened, and I'd, forgotten some little moments, and delightful to watch and fascinating.
What was your sort of initial feeling after seeing this, 6 years after we shot it?
Well, it's funny because my feelings were a little bit colored by something that I heard you say in the interview to Paige, and I think it was Paige, and you said that at one point, I don't remember saying this, but you said that I at one point said that the movie is much better than it has any right to be, or something along those lines. Do I have that right? Yeah. And that sounds like an underhanded compliment.
Sure.
It really does, but I thought about it, and I certainly wouldn't have meant it that way. And I think that and honestly, I feel more now than even I did then, having worked on a whole bunch of projects and been involved in a whole bunch of things, including some features, including some, low budget kind of DIY. Let's just see if we can get this thing off the ground features. I mean, myself and Taylor worked with Ian McLeod on a feature together, and you sort of get a sense of what it takes to make a movie with very little in terms of resources or personnel or equipment or whatever. And it's really hard. It's really hard to just make a movie, but it's even harder to make a movie that's coherent, to make a movie that has a very clear through line and very clear characters and an arc that makes sense, and with emotional weight or with moments of levity. It's hard to make. People make movies all the time, and good for them. Like everybody, like Taylor, one of the things I've learned from Taylor is that the only way to get better is just to make as much as you possibly can, as often as you possibly can, knowing full well that you're going to make bad stuff.
Right.
And you can't be afraid of that. In fact, that's how you're going to learn and get better. There are people making lots of misguided, poorly informed, poorly thought out, and poorly executed stuff all the time. You know, for someone at your stage of your career and at your age to pull all of that together into a singular vision and be committed to it and have it be about something that's got a lot of weight to it and a lot of gravitas and a lot of relatability for a lot of people is really, really something. And honestly, I think that most people who take that kind of thing on would likely fall short at some stage. And I think my initial reaction is, wow, he really pulled something off that most people at later stages in their career try to do and don't quite hit the mark, right? I mean, no movie is perfect. There's always things that are going to be better about your story, and your reticence to kind of let it go and let it just go out there and be what it is without tinkering speaks to that. But hey, it is a fully realized, complete a film with an arc and with great moments, and it's riveting to watch. And yeah, that is really what I meant, I think, when I said that, and I feel it more now even than I did then.
That's amazing. I never took it as an underhanded compliment. I may have even said it more with a little bit of oomph in that interview than you actually told me. But no, I appreciate that, because I think watching it now, obviously there's things I would have done differently. There's choices I would have made differently, but
sure, yeah,
I think it works, and I think that's more than I thought would happen.
Yeah. Well, people.
Yeah.
The other thing is that I know you want to wrap up, and I don't want to belabor it too much, but the other thing that I think, finishing it and putting it out there, the reason why that's so necessary, the reason why that's so critically necessary, is so that you can calm some of your own fears and concerns about what it being out there means. More specifically, that it doesn't mean nearly as much as you think or are afraid that it does. That people are not nearly as likely as you might think they are to watch the movie and be judging you the entire time they're watching it. Or as an actor, it took me a while to get to this point where they're not judging me as often as I think they are. I mean, I remember the first time I watched the finale of the film, the blowout, where I really get angry. My character gets angry for really the first time. And I remember the first time I saw that scene, I remember watching it and going, why am I blinking so much? Why do I blink so much? I'm constantly blinking. What the frig is wrong with me? Like, I remember being very critical. I didn't feel that at all watching it again this week. I was not, I was watching for it, and I was like, oh, what was it I saw when I watched this 5 years ago? So I remember being bothered by the performance, and now I'm not. And it's because I'm just removed from it, and anyone who's going to be watching it is going to be removed from it. And I think you can allow that weight to be lifted off your own shoulders as a storyteller and as an artist and as a creator, to say, well, no, wait a minute, I did this for me, and any of my own sort of cobwebs or feelings of insecurity around the piece, I'm going to keep within myself, and those are more than likely not going to be apparent from the road for anyone watching it. And those things that just you don't see them.
Yeah. I the second that I pressed publish, I felt so much better about everything that I was sort of concerned about. And as well too, and I told you this the other day, it felt like I now had more room for other ideas, and I wasn't constantly sort of like, well, I want to make this, but then constantly sort of comparing it to Afraid to Speak on every single level. Now I feel like, all right, I have an idea, and now I have much more space. I've learned a lot, obviously, but now I have much more space to sort of trust in my own instincts and not always be feeling like just constantly bombarded by this film for reasons that in the end genuinely don't matter. So
Yeah,
it's
It's
it's amazing.
it's something you did. It's wonderful. It's something to be proud of. Yeah, very much so.
Well, you were a huge part of that working. I don't think with the character depression not working, that being the central idea of this, I think this film would have fallen flat. And I thank you very much for taking this character, understanding him, and giving him this sort of two-sided nature of that parasitic evil and weird, comforting best friend joking around, because I think that together, and I've gotten messages from people who have said, "Man, I just want to punch that man in the face."
Yeah,
And then 20,
I wanted to punch him. I remember when it screened at I think it was in Truro. I remember not getting to go, not getting to see it, but you coming back and giving me feedback that there were some people who were really bothered. They were
oh yeah,
really bothered by my character. They were really unsettled, and that was a great compliment. I thought, oh, that's okay. That's I think that's what it was supposed to do.
yeah,
I think he's hateful. He really is hateful. And yeah, I hope it continues to bother people. I hope it,
yeah,
continues to unsettle. I think it's meant to do that. I think it helps the viewer root for Nolan,
yeah,
to break away from it. I felt that watching it this week. I was like, God, this guy's the worst, right? Worst roommate ever, which our own minds tend to be.
yeah,
Frank.
exactly.
They
Yeah,
do. They tend to be. It's a roommate that natters at you constantly that you can't shake. And in that way, I think your movie, and this is another thought that I had this week, honestly, I think your movie is far more relatable from just a general lived experience than one being strictly about mental health or depression. I think at some level, the film applies just to kind of general low level anxiety that people feel all the time, or people who are plagued by voices in their heads that give them negative ideas and negative thoughts about themselves and low self-esteem and feelings that they're never going to be accepted or loved or not worth it. All of that is in your movie too, separate and apart from the idea of depression,
hmm,
which we have come to kind of absorb in a good way, I think, as a mental illness, right?
yeah,
I think there are lots of people who would not be suffering from what we might consider to be depression who will watch your film and relate to it. They'll say, oh yeah, I feel like there's someone following me around, jabbering away at me all the time,
yeah,
and they won't shut up, and I can't get them to shut up, right? They can't get them to go away.
yeah,
And that, I think that's very common. Yeah.
yeah, big time. I knew the film worked when we were at the Churro Film Festival, and the audience had a genuine reaction when he says, and another spoiler, when he says Ellie in the finale scene, and we realize that Nolan
Yeah.
is looking right past you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I had to talk to people afterwards, and they said like, "Oh, I was so thankful that asshole was out of that. He
Yeah.
just
It's a
disappeared."
great moment. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a great moment. Yeah.
it
It
works
really
very
is.
well.
It's really well crafted. Yeah.
All right, Bob, thank you so much for your patience with this film, just your ability to adapt, your ability to improvise, your willingness to talk to me, because I think that you helped take this script into a way that made much more sense as its own story, and I very much appreciate that. Uh, Thank you for being the best asshole you could be and presenting depression on camera. I think it
Role I
worked.
was meant to play.
Well,
Yeah.
that's the thing. It's like I don't know how to say this without it making it seem like, well, thank you, you miserable man. Thank you for playing depression so well.
People need to know I'm quite delightful. They really
Yes.
do. I'm fine with it that being hard to believe. That's totally okay. Yeah.
Well, that's just a testament to your acting. When you meet you, you're a funny, welcoming human being, and then when you watch the film, they want to punch you in the face. So that's a win, I think.
That's great. Yeah. Well, thanks for writing such a cool part and such a unique script. People are not, there's lots of scripts and I heard this earlier this week where it's like, there's lots of movies and shorts and features and stuff about sad guys.
Hmm.
There's lots of stories out there about sad guys. And a lot of guys are writing stories about sad guys, and yours is unique. yours has got something about it that I think helps stand apart a little bit from a lot of the stuff I've seen and a lot of the stuff I've been in, and to this day it's one of my favorite things that I've worked on, and I'm incredibly proud of it and very proud of you. I think everybody should feel good that was part of it. I think it's a great achievement, and thank you for having me be part of it. Thank you for casting me. It's a really nice thing.
Well, I really appreciate that. This film is better, with your input. So I very much appreciate it. And hopefully sooner rather than later, we can be on the same set together one more time and
Yes.
Tell a different story and see what we can accomplish there.
The sequel, Afraid
Yes.
to Speak 2, Here to Stay Longer. That's what.
Have you been in my emails? That's not fair. You're not supposed to see that stuff.
I see it in your eyes. I see it.
Oh, okay. The reflection's just Afraid to Speak 2. All right, awesome. Thank you so much,
Cool.
Bob. Really appreciate it. And I will talk to you later.
Good luck with the movie and the run.
Thank you very much.
Take care, Dylan. Okay.
You too.
Bye.
Bye. All right, that was Bob Mann. He plays depression, the physical manifestation of depression in Afraid to Speak, which is available right this second, right now, forever at riverpointstudios.com/afraid to speak. You can watch the film, you can watch the bonus features, and all that. And if for whatever reason, 4 or 5 years down the road, YouTube completely collapses, we will find another place to put it so that this film is available for you to watch forever. So thanks again. This was the final live stream for Afraid to Speak as we talked to all the main cast. Obviously the only other main cast that we could not talk to, David Wojcik, who unfortunately passed away a few years ago. He plays Bill the grandfather. And with this being the last live stream, I do want to take a little bit of time to thank David for what he gave this film. He not only gave us an amazing character with a lot of heart, a lot of care, and just a lot of empathy and a different view within the film itself, but he also gave us a lot of production tools. He let us film in his house. He helped me fix some of the aspects of the script that weren't quite working. And David was a genuine pillar to this thing working. So I just want to thank David for being a part of it. He got to see the film. I believe it was the Truro Film Festival. He got to see the film. So I am happy that he got to see it. And from the conversation I had afterwards, I think he was happy with it. So that makes me incredibly happy. But it's our last live stream. We will continue sharing things from the film. We have a couple of fun sort of promotional ideas coming up. Just sort of continue letting people know about it, sharing stories and all that stuff. Scott, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I hope all is well. We will be sharing more coming into it, probably up until January 1st. And then after that, sort of allow the film to exist on its own without constant promotion and barraging all of you to watch the film, stuff like that. But Afraid to Speak, out now, riverpointstudios.com/afraid to speak. I hope you enjoy it. If you are struggling with any sort of mental health issues or challenges like depression, anxiety, which we show in the film, or anything else, please reach out. The whole point of our film is to hopefully push towards a conversation, being more open about this stuff. So if you do struggle, please open up to those you trust. We are all in this together, and the world is better with you in it, despite how hard it may feel sometimes. So thanks again, everybody. Last live stream, Afraid to Speak, out now. One more time, riverpointstudios.com/afraid to speak. And now we are going to go get to work on what's next. So thanks again, everybody.